Hello Rebel and welcome back to my life. Spoiler warning, this video is about the Critical Role show EXU Calamity. Now, I've only seen the first 3 episodes. I haven't watched last night's finale yet, so spoilers for the first 3 episodes, and if everything that I say here is wrong because the finale changes it all, well, that's not really going to happen. But just so you know, EXU Calamity is Critical Role's actual play D&D show. And it's really, really good. So it's a limited run show in the whole lore of the world of Critical Role. There's this event that happened thousands of years ago called the Calamity, when gods struck down wizards who had, unlocked secrets of arcane knowledge that they were not supposed to know about, grew too high, thought to challenge the gods themselves, and the gods struck them down. We've known about that for a while. If you've watched Critical Role, you've heard about the Calamity a lot, but we've never known too many details. We've never known everything about it, and we've certainly never had a story told in that time. And so they decided to do a limited run show about it. Just 4 episodes. Again, as I'm recording this, the final episode of EXU Calamity recorded last night, and I'm going to be listening to it today. And it's pretty intense. It's a great show. It's so amazing. It's incredible. Instead of being DM'd by Matt Mercer, as most of the Critical Role show is, it's DM'd by Brennan Lee Mulligan, who is just a great dungeon master. He's fantastic and so fun, and he loves messing with his players. And it's a very good show. You should watch EXU Calamity. If you know nothing about it, you should definitely watch it before watching this video. But EXU Calamity is not a show about good people. It's actually a show about villains. And you might be saying, how is it a show about villains? They're the main characters of the show. The story is about them. And if you're saying that, it is because you are confusing the words villain and antagonist. An antagonist is somebody in a story who is acting against the protagonist. And the protagonist is the person that the story is about. So the characters of EXU are what we, in the industry, call villain protagonists. The story's about them. They're the ones who the story is centered around, and their actions drive the story. But that does not change the fact that they are villains. So then that obviously begs the question, what is a villain? And not to put too fine a point on it, but a villain is the person who does the bad thing. Intent isn't really important in who's a villain or not. I think that applies to real life as well as in storytelling. Intention is, 1, unknowable. You can't know what's in somebody's mind or what their intentions were. You can only infer it through their actions. And 2, everybody probably has good intentions. Anybody can justify even the worst things. Literal Nazis and white supremacists think they're doing the right thing and that their actions are justified. So intent doesn't have anything to do with whether you're a villain or not. However, just because a bad consequence occurred from your actions doesn't necessarily make you a villain either, right? There's a few mitigating circumstances that are like, okay, that a bad thing happened, but that doesn't mean that you're a villain. As just a really obvious example, Bilbo gives the ring to Frodo. In The Lord of the Rings, you're probably familiar, he effectively curses his nephew. He gives him a ring that binds him to the soul of a Dark Lord who wants to destroy the world. This poisons Frodo over the course of years and decades, and literally makes him unable to live happily even after the ring and the Dark Lord are destroyed. Bilbo ruined Frodo's life, but he didn't know he was doing that when he gave him the ring. One of the mitigating circumstances that can make you not a villain, even if a bad thing happens because of your actions, is were you tricked into doing that? Bad people will trick good people into doing things. The fault is with the bad person who did the trick, not the good person who was tricked. They are the victim, one of the victims in this circumstance. They are not the person who did the bad. You can also have situations in fictional worlds where there's mind control, and this actually is a thing that kind of bugs me a little bit. I mean, I get it, but if somebody's mind controlled and then they're forced under mind control to do all these bad things, hurt people that they loved, destroy things, murder innocent people, there's a trope or a tendency to that they're racked with guilt, that they blame themselves for it. I never been mind controlled and committed genocide, but I like to think that if I was in real life, I wouldn't blame myself because I was mind controlled. I literally didn't do it. Maybe I was trapped in my head watching myself do it. That doesn't mean I was participating. Yeah, you know what I mean? That trope's always bugged me, but that's also not what we're talking about here. You can also just, like, be uneducated. Actually, this is probably more, along the lines of what happened to Bilbo. He didn't know anything about the ring when he gave it to Frodo. All he knew was that Gandalf was advising him not to hold on to it, which Gandalf did because he was suspicious about the ring. Gandalf also didn't know everything about the ring, but he was just like, I have a feeling that ring's a bad thing, and I think it would be very good for you to get rid of it and give it to Frodo. So, again, like, Gandalf also, like, participated in cursing Frodo and ruining his life, but it did result in good consequences overall, and he didn't know when he did it that it was for sure the One Ring. So, like, again, bad consequences don't automatically make you a villain when there's a bunch of reasons that bad consequences can happen through your actions that are not necessarily your fault. So the switch from simply ignorant or you got tricked or whatever, the switch from that to being a villain is when you see the bad consequence, or you know the bad consequence can happen, or the bad consequence has already happened, and you don't accept responsibility, and you don't change your behavior. You just keep going. Maybe you even double down. That's some villain shit. Which brings us to EXU Calamity. So who's the villain in EXU Calamity? Spoiler alert, it's everyone. It's all of them. And I do mean it's everyone. It's all of them. Listen, the players are not the villains who are doing evil deeds and trying to defeat the good guys or trying to defeat the heroes of the story. There aren't good guys in the show. I'm sure that there's good people in the world and in the greater lore and everything like that. They just aren't present. The antagonists of the show are also villains, right? You've got your villain protagonists, and then you've got your antagonists who are even worse. You've got the dean of, like, a magic college who's raising the dead and summoning devils and trying, like, poisoning people, giving the player characters poison to kill themselves because they know the world's about to end. And then, who is it? Oh yeah, literally the Lord of the Nine Hells as Modius is in the show. Much worse villain than any of the player characters. He's generally considered to be a bad guy. It's villains all the way down. It's just villains. It's just villains, and under that, it's a villain lasagna. A villazania, if you will. But focusing on the player characters. So they all have some villain, a little bit of villain in them, but it's definitely to different degrees, to varying degrees. If I had to pick a main villain, it would be Laren. And as a side note, I love this for Abria Iyengar, the player who plays Laren. I think she's fucking amazing and fantastic, and her characterization is some of the best in the show. If you are Abria and you happen to see this, or if you're a fan of Abria and you're watching this, please don't take this as a criticism. This is amazing. She's doing so well. The character is so great. But she's a villain. I mean, you've got taking public resources and making decisions for the public unilaterally. Just like, those don't belong to Laren at all. She's stealing them for her own reasons. She's blatantly prejudiced against the druids. Calling them, like, grubby little primitives mucking around in the dirt. That's gross terminology. It's not good. Unilaterally stealing resources from the druids when she decided that she wanted them and she would make better use of them than they would, even though they belonged to the druids. This is literally tax evasion. Laren participates in tax evasion right there on screen. It just happens. We all watch it happen. Yes, I know I have all of the power, in this case represented by Aether, in the same way that, it's represented by money in the real world. I know I have all of this power and that I'm in control of it. And I know that I owe a portion of it to another organization for the greater good of people and the planet as a whole. But I've decided I don't want to give it to them. It's just tax evasion. It's just what it is. But the real kicker and the real start of the villainy is the death of Evandrin, which happened prior to the show. But that's when we get that's some real villain shit. Laren started out pursuing knowledge. Nothing wrong with that. Doing some research, like spending some magic and everything like that, like, and on this idea that she had for, like, some cool new magic. Pursuing knowledge. Nothing wrong with that. In the pursuit of that, in the research, her best friend fucking died. Like, he was participating willingly, knew the risks and everything like that, but he died as a result of her experiments. And not only did she not own up to that, she covered it up. She covered it up and doubled down on the pursuit of her goal of developing this magic that would transport an entire city across planes of existence. And yeah, about that goal, how is that's not a good goal. It's pointed at, it's in the show that that's not a good goal. For one thing, that's just not something that you can actually do democratically. This is not like most things, right? This is not something you can hold a vote about, because let's say that you hold a vote and it's like, we want to send this entire city into the Feywild, and 60% of the people vote, yeah, sure, let's send this city into the Feywild. Okay, so 60% of the people vote, yeah. The other 40%, what are they going to do? They have to go with the city into the Feywild. Democratic forcible relocation is still forcible relocation, and it's not okay. It's unclear even what the benefit of this is. Quay asks Laren, it's like, why? Why would we do that? We are happy here. We have everything we need. We have all the resources that we need. You, individually as a person, you can just go to another plane of existence whenever you want to. You have that power. Why do you need to take everyone with you, whether they want to go or not? What is the benefit? What do we get out of this? And Laren's literally just like, because I can do it. I am developing the technology to be able to do it. And then we'll have that technology and everyone will remember me as the person who created that technology. That's why. That's selfish. And I've got bad news for you. Most of the people who are the best remembered throughout history are remembered for doing really bad shit. If you don't believe me, survey some Americans and find out how many of them know who Hitler was versus who was the president of their own frickin' country during World War II. I bet a lot more people know who Hitler was than know the answer to the second question. And for those of you who are now furiously Googling the answer, it was FDR through most of World War II, and then just a little bit of Harry S. Truman right in at the end there, as a treat. So Laren had a bad goal, and she pursued it badly, saw the negative consequences, ignored them, covered it up, and doubled down. This is some Mark Zuckerberg shit, okay? I'm serious. The parallels are just crazy. So you start out by being given some power, right? It's represented by Aether in EXU Calamity. It's represented by money in real life. And you know, to be fair, you're given it because you've displayed some talent, right? Like, you're not obviously like the best person in the world or the most brilliant or genius or whatever, but you're pretty good. That's why you were given the power in the first place, right? But then the brain rot sets in and you decide that because you were given some of the power, you now deserve and are going to take all of it, and you're never going to stop, and no amount of power or resources is going to be enough for you. And then Zuckerberg, or Laren, sees the consequences, the bad consequences of their action, right? They're right there. They're aware of it. They know that a bad thing happened because of it. They see the world be made worse overall by what they have done, and then they double down, and they cover up, and they deny that it ever happened, and they keep doing it at the exact same time, because they are managing to convince themselves, again, motive, right? Motive does not matter in this. They've managed to convince themselves that it will be better, and everyone will see, everyone will understand me in the end. Laren is on some Mark Zuckerberg shit. There's no other way to put it. But she is not the only villain in the show. All of the players to some degree, definitely villainous. Although interestingly, it seems like most of the villainy of the other players revolves in one way or another around Laren. Because this is a Bria motherfucking Iyengar, and if she's in the story is about her. That's true, and I don't care what you have to say about it. But Paisha helped in the covering up of Evandrin, knew about everything Laren was doing, right? Knew about all the experimentation, what she was pursuing, helped cover that up, helped cover up Evandrin's death, did the memory wipe on Xerxes, we'll get to you, Xerxes. And then throughout the course of the show, and then also like hinted at and indicated in the backstory before the show, we see her doing all sorts of backroom dealings and manipulation to hold on to generational wealth and power. And like, not for good ends, for selfish, egotistical ends. Nidus and Quay, I think, as characters, can maybe sustain the best argument for not being totally villains, but I don't think that they do win that argument in the end. It's not as open and shut, but it does shut a very particular way. They were mostly in the dark about the plane shifting, about the desire to send the whole city into another plane of existence. They learn about it, it seems, for the first time in the show. And then over the course of the show, when they do learn about it, they do continue mostly to support their friends who were doing the bad stuff. But that's a little more complicated because of the shortened timeline, right? This falls more into like the tricked category that we talked about earlier. Like, okay, so they discover you, like your friend, your best friend, your ex-wife, people that you love in your life. You discover that they're doing bad shit and you can see some bad consequences from it. But they come to you and they're like, please just trust me. I know what this looks like right now, but can you give me a day, just a day, and trust me and believe in me? Because we're right there. We're so close. And in a day, it'll all be worth it. And both of them are like, you know, as characters, Nidus and Quay, they're like, okay, I'll trust you. You're my oldest friend. We've been together for years. I love you. I will give you that. I'm very, I don't know if this is correct, but I will trust you. That's a very understandable thing. And that's totally something that you'll do whether you are or are not a villain. But Quay does do an entire media cover-up as the sole propaganda mouthpiece of, you know, the structure of wizard society, puts out false information, straight up lies, frames other people for the bad consequences of what's happening that he and his friends are causing. That's not good. Nidus steals guild resources and unleashes experimental death robots to assist in everything that they're doing. Also not good. These are bad actions. Sarett. What about Sarett? Okay, I mean, so I can't be objective because Travis Willingham is just such an amazing player. I love him so much. I love his characters. He just has a way of wrapping himself around my heart and just ripping it out of my chest. And EXU Calamity is no exception. So from my completely unobjective perspective, I would say that Sarett, so far as of episode 3, is the least villainous. But he's not villainous, because Sarett is a cop. He is part of Avalir's power structure, and his job, as most police are in a society that looks like Avalir's society or that looks like our society, his actual job is to protect the power and the private property of the elites who control everything. He is in the circle of elites. He's literally part of the circle of brass, the organization that controls everything and who coordinate with each other to continue to enhance their control of everything. What's fascinating and a great, you know, like component of this whole story is that Sarett was elevated to that position despite not being magical. He's the only person on the team with no magic, none whatsoever. He's got no spells. He's just got his wits. He's sneaky. He's just brilliant. And because his mundane abilities were so incredible, the magical elites raised him up. They gave him devices and techniques and connections and power that put him on par with them because they lifted him up, literally. But then suddenly he discovers that these people, this small circle of elites that he was brought into and who he's called friends for years, are engaged in secret, illegal magical experimentation that by all accounts, and according to all evidence of everything that they've seen so far, has a tremendous potential to just annihilate the entire city that he's supposed to be protecting. He says it best when he discovers for the first time that Laren's experimentation killed her best friend and Xerxes's husband, and that she now wants to do that same experiment on the whole city. The city where his 2 children live, who he loves very much. Travis Willingham, you made me cry a couple of times already. Don't hurt me anymore, man. But that's when Sarett bails, right? I have to assume that he's going to come back and join everybody for like the action of the finale, but he bails, man. Because you might be able to get in good with the rich and the elites, and if they like you, they might raise you up. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to screw you over in the pursuit of their own selfish ends, and Sarett has learned that the hard way. Quick sidebar about redemption of villains, right? So Sarett realizes that shit is fucked and is like, I can't participate in this. Like, you guys are selfish and you like the consequences that you could wreak, I'm not able to live with that anymore. I'm interested to see what happens in the finale, but the sad thing, the pain of it, is that I know, since it is the finale and everything's about to end, Sarah doesn't have time for a proper redemption. Not a proper one. There's so many stories, this is another trope, right? There's so many stories where the villain realizes that they were in the wrong and does an act of sacrifice at the end, but like dies, right? Like they sacrifice themselves. Darth Vader. Oh my gosh, I can't watch the Emperor kill my son. I will kill the Emperor and sacrifice my own life for that. Spoilers for Star Wars, I guess. That's a good act, but that doesn't redeem everything that Darth Vader and before him Anakin Skywalker did, right? For the true redemption arc, you've got like Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, who's like, I was wrong, I did a bad, and I'm going to spend a long time making up that damage. I'm going to work for the good guys. I'm going to recognize that they don't trust me initially. I'm going to be okay with that. I'm going to do the work anyway. I'm going to spend time and devote my life to fixing all of the bad that I've participated in. This is EXU Calamity. Nobody gets to do that. They're all probably going to die in the finale. Maybe trying to save people. I get the idea that they're going to do the best they can to save as many people as they can. But they're gonna, like, they're not going to redeem themselves because you can't. Because you've done too much bad and you don't have enough time to fix it with the good. So, let's talk about Xerxes. Oh, sweet baby Xerxes, my precious summer child. Oh boy. There's such an interesting conversation to be had here that I don't have time to get into fully. Xerxes pre-memory wipe, in my opinion, definitely a villain, 100%. His husband and his husband's best friend did secret magical experimentation that resulted in his husband dying. And it was all illegal, right? It was all bad. Rather than expose this or do anything about it, he decides that he is so sad about his husband dying, understandable, that he wants the magic girls to wipe his memory so that he doesn't remember the bad thing that he was a participant of. And in the meantime, the magical girls should keep pursuing their line of magical research that got his husband killed, which they're doing illegally, stealing resources that belong to the public. That's some villain shit, okay? That's just bad. It's just villainy. But is he still a villain after his mind is wiped? And when he doesn't remember any of this, he doesn't know that that happened. Now, at the start of the show, anyway, gets revealed in the show. Is start of show Xerxes a villain if he doesn't remember? Like, interesting conversation, right? This is some speculative fiction shit. This is like some, oh my gosh, this is a wild, crazy scenario. What is the nature of good and evil? Is he a villain or not? But summoning the literal Lord of Evil certainly doesn't help. Because that's the main thing, right? Xerxes is sympathetic to and actively aiding and abetting Asmodeus, Lord of the Nine Hells. You can say he's being tricked by Asmodeus. That's kind of Asmodeus's whole thing, is tricking people into helping him, despite all of the evil. But like, Xerxes is the guy who gave the overly sanctimonious speech about the gods and rejecting the gods. And if you accept one of the gods, you accept all of them. And no gods no longer. I'm the godless paladin. No gods. And then he turns right around and secretly, without telling anyone, converses with and aids the one god who pretty much everyone for all of history agrees is the one definitely evil, worst, absolute, top tier, villain, bad, no good god. Again, he is being tricked, but at what point does that become just your own damn fault, dude? So there you have it. EXU Calamity. It's a show about villains. It's an amazing, fantastic show. Seriously, if you have not seen it already, please go watch it. It's so fucking good. It's probably the best D&D show I've ever seen, even though it's limited. It's a limited run, right? Like a limited series, and that's usually not my thing. I love the long campaign, just like get me that emotional investment over the course of years. That's where I live. But EXU Calamity, man, it might be the best D&D show. My favorite D&D show I've ever seen. But for a final question and a final thought, who's the real villain of EXU Calamity? Who's the big bad behind it all? Who's the one really creating all the problems behind the scenes? It's none of the characters. It's not the Lord of the Hells. It's none of that. It is the social structure itself. It is the society that builds itself to consolidate all of the power, all of the resources into the hands of an elite few who then only take more and more for themselves, stealing from others, breaking promises, and deciding that that's their right, that they deserve to be here, and it all belongs to them. Yes, that's right, Rebel. Maybe the real calamity was the late-stage capitalism we made along the way. And that is all I've got for you today, Rebel. Hey, I make these videos every Friday, and if you want to make it easier for me to make these videos every Friday, or if you want to like check out some of the books that I write a whole bunch of fantasy novels. They're all on the shelf over there. I've got a Patreon. You know what Patreon is. You don't need me to tell you. There's a link in the description. You can contribute to my Patreon. That'd be very cool and sexy of you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Friday. Bye! We did it!